Good evening to everybody who's joining in right now. We're just going to give it a few minutes for everybody to join in.
I'm going to pull up Google Earth just in case we want to look at something.
Oh,
I don't think we will, but.
Okay. Okay, we just had another person join us, so we'll give it just another minute or two. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us tonight for the open house for the Pacific Highway Non-Motorized Trail Project. The purpose of the meeting tonight is to give the public an update on this project and what we've done so far and what we'll be doing in the future. Just kind of let you know a little bit more about the project. My name is Christine Mullen. I am a senior capital engineer with the City of Federal Way, and I am the project manager for this project. We also have on with us here tonight, we have Sean Battle with KPFF, who is one of the consultant engineers for the project, and also Aaron Luoma with HBB Landscape Architecture, and he's also on the consultant team. Then we also have EJ Walsh is attending. He's the Public Works Director for the City of Federal Way. So just to let everybody know, we are recording this meeting right now, and it will be available. It will be posted to the project webpage after tonight. And this slideshow presentation, we will also be posting that to the project website. I'm anticipating that our presentation will last maybe around 45 minutes or so. We'll try to respect everybody's time and the fact that it's a beautiful evening outside. So, just to let you guys know what the format of the meeting will be tonight. All of the attendees are muted, and there will not be a question and answer session as part of the presentation tonight. That being said, we would love to get feedback from everybody who's attending and from the public about this project. So we have several different ways we're going to have it where you can provide feedback. We're looking for questions you may have or just for comments. You know, if it's positive and you just want to say, hey, we love this project, we'd love to hear that. If you have a question and want a little bit more clarification about something, we'd love to hear that. So what we're going to do is there will be a 2-week comment period for people to submit questions or comments about the project. And so that comment period will close April 29th. And just so you know, I'm going to go over all of this at the end again also. Once we get all the questions and comments from the public, we will then compile all of those comments, and the city will prepare a document with all of our responses, and we will post that to the project webpage. Again, I'm going to go into more details, but there's going to be 4 different ways that you can submit comments. We have an online form that you can access from a computer or a smartphone, a phone number where you can call and leave a voicemail. You'll be able to just email directly, or you can send a letter to City Hall. So, and just to let you know that any emails, voicemails, etc., we're not going to respond to those individually or call people back. All the responses will be in that consolidated document. So once we go through this presentation tonight, the final slide will have specific details, the email address, the phone number, the links to all that stuff. And we will leave that slide up for a while after the presentation. So you'll have a chance to get there. And I would also like to say that, feel free to share that information with neighbors or other individuals who might be interested in the project. They might want to go back and listen to this recording after the fact and then provide their input and comments on the project. And so we would love to hear from them as well. So moving forward with that, just to let you know what tonight's format's going to be, I'm going to kind of go over a general overview of the project, and then I'm going to bounce it over to the design team to go into some of the more specifics. So with that, Sean, could you please, thank you. All right. So I know I did recognize some of the names that were RSVP'd for tonight, but there might be some individuals who are new and just now hearing about this project. So some of this might be repeat for those who've been part of previous meetings. So the project tonight is the Pack Highway South non-motorized corridor. It runs for portions along 16th Avenue South from South 308th Street, and it goes up to South 288th Street. So what this map's showing here is really how this proposed trail ties into an overall non-motorized network in the city of Federal Way and with surrounding communities. So our project is that red line that's circled there. The dotted green line coming off the south end of that trail, that is a planned bike boulevard that will connect directly to downtown Federal Way. And so that's showing how this project will have access to like the new transit center and everything that's located in our downtown community. The teal line that runs directly north from the project, that's showing how there's an ultimate connection to the city center for the city of Des Moines. And the orange and yellow lines there, the orange line is some planned bike lanes that is actually, we just recently received some funding for that project. So it will be happening sooner rather than later. And then the yellow line is a future trail. And all of that is tying into the purple line, which is the interurban trail. So this project is very exciting for the community because it really is serving not only the direct non-motorized users in the area of the trail right now, but it's just really going to provide access to them to get into the overall neighborhoods in Federal Way and to the local communities. All right, next slide. So this one here kind of shows the overall alignment, and Sean's going to get into this in more detail, but you can see here it starts at South 308th Street near the Federal Way High School, and then it will continue up to South 288th. And one of the questions that I always hear is, this isn't on Pack Highway, why are you calling it the Pack Highway non-motorized trail? This project is the #1 project in the city's bike and ped plan and has been for a long time. And it's always been the plan to have this parallel route in order to get bicyclists and pedestrians away from Pack Highway. That road has some of the highest traffic volumes in the city. And so it doesn't necessarily have a high comfort level for non-motorized users. So this parallel route is the preferred alternative for non-motorized users. Next slide, please. All right, as far as the project budget and schedule, so we normally break projects down into 3 phases: design, right-of-way, and construction. So the design of the project is currently underway, has an overall budget of $700,000, which a large portion of that has been funded with a federal grant. We've been working on the design since last year and anticipate that we'll probably keep working on that through next year for parts of it. For right-of-way, that is anticipated to cost around $840,000. Again, we have a federal grant that funds the majority of that. We will actually begin, now right-of-way is, for us, that includes both purchase of property and also temporary construction easements if we need to access part of a parcel during construction. So we will start that process of working with property owners if we need to acquire any property rights or property. We will start that later this year, probably in the fall. we will start that, and that will continue on into next year. And then for construction, that's estimated at 5.1 million, and that includes the actual construction costs as well as construction engineering and construction management services. We did recently receive a 1.835 federal grant for what we're calling phase 1 of the project. And then there will be a funding cycle that opens up next year for additional federal grants, and we plan to apply for grants then. It's the same process that we did where we received our design and right-of-way grants. So we feel like we have a very high probability of receiving funding for construction as well. So we're really excited about the fact that all these grant agencies are recognizing the benefits this has, not only to the city, but on a regional basis. And we've been very fortunate that we've had quite a bit of grant funding for this project. So with the construction, we are breaking that down into 2 phases. The first phase is the section from 304th Street up through the section of, or the intersection of Dash Point Road, and that we received the first federal grant for construction for, and that's why that is being constructed as the first phase. So, and that is actually anticipated to start construction this fall, or I should say be advertised for construction this fall. It might start construction this fall, or we might actually start the construction in early 2022. And then the next phase of construction would be the section north of Dash Point Road, and then the section south of 304th. Well, it'll be the section north for sure. The section south, we're trying to determine with funding if we would include that in phase 1 or in phase 2. And so that will be evaluated at a later date to make sure. All right, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to kick it over to Sean, and he's going to go through and look at some of this in a little bit more specifics.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. And I did want to just pile on to the funding part, where there is this federal funding in there, and it kind of hems the design team and the city and what they can do with the money and what sort of betterments they can and can't do. So that really is one of the main guiding factors in the design here. Sure. So here we have a little more zoomed in, and I can zoom in and out of this, and I'm going to be doing that throughout the presentation so you can see on your screens a little bit better. But this is essentially the entire route. It's broken into, there's this upper view and a lower view, and it's essentially a match line over here. So this line right here connects over to this line. We just did that so it kind of all fits in one page. And then I have a couple other slides that will be more zoomed in onto these areas. But I just did want to at least kind of walk through using this. You can see we're starting down here on the 308th, just at the corner of the high school here. And there's already a sidewalk out there, and we're essentially going to be widening that to the standard trail width. And I should back up. So what we're doing is we're going to put in a non-motorized trail, and a typical trail width is 10 to 12 feet wide, and they usually have a shy distance on either side, like it's sort of a shoulder, like a 2-foot wide shoulder or a landscaping strip or something like that. And it's, for the most part, it will be asphalt pavement. Where it's next to like an existing concrete sidewalk, for instance, next to the high school here, that's a concrete sidewalk, it's not asphalt. So when we widen that concrete sidewalk, we're going to be widening it with concrete. So, you know, you can imagine that would look a little silly if it was asphalt right next to the existing concrete sidewalk. So anyways, there's this sidewalk already next to the high school. It runs along Pack Highway, and we're going to be widening that. There's some light poles out here that will have to get adjusted because they're going to be in the way of the new widened trail. As we cross, there was some different options that we looked at for how to cross over from here over to 16th. And I'll get into a slide that shows a little more about that. But there's this parking lot area, and we're kind of going through next to there's a Jiffy Lube down here and some other commercial retail properties. And hopefully you can see it crosses 16th here. And then we stay on this side, the west side of 16th, all the way down to Dash Point. Same situation here that we just talked about. There's a sidewalk out there right now. We're going to be globbing onto that sidewalk and essentially widening it to 10-foot width. Right now, that sidewalk is 5 or 6 feet wide. We're going to be crossing 304th, and this trail is going to follow essentially the edge of the public right-of-way. It's going to go right up next to all these. There's essentially some fencing out here along these properties. And the trail is going to go right up to that. And there, we have some typical sections I'll show you, but it's not like the asphalt of this trail is going to go right up to that fence. There is like a 4-foot landscape buffer between the private property fence and the trail. And there will be, you know, where you cross streets, there's treatments that you put onto these. Typically, we'll put a bollard so that cars don't drive up onto this trail because, you know, this is wide. It's 10 feet wide, and so a car could easily accidentally or purposefully go up into that trail. And we do have the ADA warning strips where we cross streets. I'm going to kind of scroll down here. So now we're a little further north, and this that you see over here is Sacagawea Park. And there's actually there's some on-street parking there today, and we're going to maintain that. So that's why you see this little bulb out for the trail here. And I'm going to scooch my view over down to this other side now. You can see we're continue to follow 16th. We're right next to Sacagawea Park. We bulb out right here. There's a lot of utility infrastructure here we're trying to save. Plus it gives kind of a nice urban landscaping appeal there. And Aaron will get into that more. And then right here, you can see where actually the crossing is going to be a diagonal crossing, which is a little unique. And we did have to, the design team had to prepare a traffic study. Dash Point Road is actually it's SR 509, it's a state route. And so we have to get some approvals from WashDOT in order to do something like this. And we had to go through a traffic study and show that, is this going to make an already very congested intersection worse? And in fact, it makes it a little better because less people are using these long crossings. More people are using this short crossing, which then can speed up the cycle time. And it's actually safer because there's more sight distance for, you know, cars turning left and right. So, and this is I think it's a Shell, yeah, it's a Shell station right here, a gas station. And so we're essentially, the trail is running along Redondo Way here at this point. And, you know, it's going to just follow the profile of Redondo Way. That's this roadway it has a steep grade going downhill. And the trail is going to follow that. And starting right about here, you can see it branches away from Redondo Way. And there's actually a utility maintenance access spot here. And you can, you can't see it with the line work on, but if this line work was turned off, you could see that there's a swath of trees missing through this entire area, and that's for this utility maintenance path. There's a lot of utilities back here. We have, you know, Lake Haven Water, sewer, there's telecoms, there's fiber optics, Puget Sound Energy has gas lines, there's power lines. And so we're trying to thread the needle and really trying to minimize the impacts to those utilities as much as we can. There will be some utility impacts, but we're really trying to minimize that. And you can see, like right here, the trail kind of has this little slight jog there, and that's because we're trying to miss some of the large transmission utility poles that are out there. Another thing to note is, for the most part, the trail is the ADA standard is if the trail is following a roadway, if it's adjacent to a road, the trail or sidewalk or whatever it is, the ADA path can just follow that roadway grade. But over through this wooded area, we're no longer along a roadway. So the rest of this trail from essentially Redondo Way, where it branches off, all the way to the north end, has to meet ADA requirements. And so for a slope, we can't go steeper than a 5% slope. Thankfully, this whole area through here is at about a 5% slope. It maxes out over here, but there is a little bit of a retaining wall that we're going to need right here. It's kind of be sort of cut into the hillside a little bit. It's likely going to be a rockery style retaining wall. But that wall's 150 feet long, and it really is there just so that we can maintain the ADA grades. We continue this way, and the path stays starting right here where my hand is. The path starts to cut through private property. It's all private properties that have a frontage with Pacific Highway South. We don't, right now, the way we've got it designed, we don't think we're going to need any property on this side. And if I keep going up here, here is a commercial building. It's got some, I think there's an insurance, maybe a nail salon, there's some retail or something in there. And early on, we were looking at some options, a couple options right here, which you can kind of see, and we'll zoom into this a little bit more later, and I'll talk about that. I did want to mention that, especially through this wooded area, you know, it's dark. So we're going to put pedestrian scale lighting through here. So it will be lit at night. And so people will feel comfortable walking through here. There's also talk about potentially having some of the safe city cameras through here. And the idea is we want to make this a safe destination for people to feel safe in walking through here. All right. Unless you think I missed something there, Christine, I'm going to go to the next slide.
Yeah, no, that was very thorough.
Okay, here's one of the slides I wanted to show everybody. Is this, we're kind of zoomed in at this near the Federal Way High School here. And we looked at a few different options. There's this question of, okay, if we have the trail over here on Pack Highway, we have the trail over here by these tennis courts, how do we get from here to there? And we looked at a few options here. One in the yellow kind of cuts through this courtyard area and uses this sidewalk and just kind of run into this over here, the sidewalk over here. The school had some very legitimate concerns here because the bus is using this and putting trail users next to, you know, the bus loading zone. And so we looked at this, we looked at a couple more options. Excuse me. One is this blue option where it sort of comes along here and goes in front of this retail area here and jogs up and connects. And another one was this option where we come across and we would come up this way. And this is all private property. It would require a significant amount of private property acquisition. Whereas you can see in the blue technically is in public right of way. This, I don't know if you can see it on your screen, but you can see a red line. Those two red lines there represent technically the public right of way, which I gather used to be an old alignment of 16th Avenue at some point. And so we did hear back from the school, and their preferred option is this blue one. They didn't, they had legitimate concerns about putting it up here. So we're moving ahead with this blue alignment here. Excuse me. Go to the next slide. Okay, now we got a couple more of these views where I'm a little more zoomed in. You can see here, At 304th, there is the notion of putting a little traffic circle here to help traffic calming. Apparently along 304th, there can be quite some speedy traffic, I guess I'd say, and this could be a traffic calming measure. And so we're going through and making sure that if we put a traffic circle here, can the school buses that use this route, can they get around this okay? So we're looking at all that also. So I kind of talked about this whole area. I will zoom into here a little more. You can see this. So now I'm back at the very north end at 288. And we were looking at, there's two options here, trail option A and B. Trail option A sort of swings out and goes over this. This is a really steep hillside here. This parking lot, I want to say, is 20, 30 feet above this house down here. Mm-hmm. So it's a really steep drop off. And because of that really steep drop off, you know, we had our geotechnical and structural engineers take a look at this, came up with some preliminary options of how you would support a trail. It's essentially, you know, one option is to have a big retaining wall there. However, it gets costly because that starts to put a lot of load on the hillside, and you have to deal with potentially lightweight fill, which gets very expensive. Another option was to sort of treat this like almost like a bridge, like a little bridge, and there's columns, you know, going into the hillside along the center of the trail, holding that up. And again, you can imagine the cost associated with that gets very high. And so we went back to looking at, well, what if we just went along this parking lot? If we acquired this western 20 feet of this parking lot and just had the trail go along there. And so we're starting the conversations with this property owner and talking about what sort of impacts that may have on their parking, their various trash services and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's looking like it's going to be far less expensive to just go with trail option B because of those structural and geotechnical issues I just mentioned. And there are a lot of, I don't know how familiar you are with the area, but there's a ton of utilities right in this little corner that we're starting to coordinate with the various utility owners about how are we going to relocate. And of course, we're doing whatever we can. If there's solutions for us to alter a design to help those utility companies, we work through that. But sometimes there's just no other option other than moving a utility pole. All right, I'm going to go to the next slide. Okay, so I'm going to go through some typical sections, like a cross section. And Aaron can chime in here too on some of these. But what you're looking at here is, would be a typical cross section along that 16th Avenue. We call it a south section. And so you have the existing—
Between 304th and Dash.
Yes, between 304th and Dash Point. So there's this existing roadway here. There's typically right now a ditch out here and an existing 4-foot sidewalk that kind of meanders through this area. And then this right-of-way line that you see here essentially represents the fence line that's out there today. And so the idea is we're going to, stay entirely within the right-of-way and not even need a temporary construction easement over here. But you can see there's a 4-foot landscape buffer over here, a 12-foot trail, and then a landscape buffer here, which will vary 4 to 6 feet. And then here's the existing road. And we're still trying to work through what kind of drainage impacts this will have. Typically for whenever you put this much new impervious down, you have to treat that water from a detention standpoint. And we have to try and mimic, I don't say try, we have to mimic essentially a forested condition. That's the Department of Ecology requirement. And so we're trying to figure out, is this become like a low swale? Are we going to have some underground drainage systems with catch basins and underground pipe to pick it all up and convey it and detain it somehow. So we're still working through that. And there will be, there are locations along 16th between 304th and Dash Point where there's like a couple street lights, but otherwise it's pretty dark. And so our illumination designers are figuring out if we need to add some additional pedestrian scale lighting along this route. Here's this area down by Dash Point. There's Sacagawea Park here. And Aaron, I'll let you chime in, but Aaron's thought about some landscape and hardscape at some spots.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So I think this area is a real pivotal point in the whole trail corridor because it's the intersection of Dash Point Road, but it's also really at the kind of some of these gateway entrances to the park and the school there. So in order to meander the trail to go around some utilities, it also really serves as a really good spot as a middle resting area or an area to identify the trail that goes further to the north and the south. If you were perhaps walking or riding your bike along Dash Point Road, you'd be able to identify and notice that this is a significant trail that you could connect to. So we're planning on some various amenities here to help enhance that experience as either a resting spot or a meeting spot to meet someone to go along the trail and to enhance the experiences you might enter the park or school if you're headed that direction too.
Speaking of that, I forgot to mention, I'm going to go back to this slide. So there are a couple connection spots that we're having directly into Sacagawea Park. One was what we were just looking at right there at Dash Point Road. And the other one is sort of on the south side of Sacagawea Park. And you can see there's going to be sort of a nice new connection here. And it's going to connect to some trails that are already out throughout this area. And from what I understand, the Parks Department is thrilled about that. It's a nice way to get the kids in and out of the park, nice, safe way.
And Sean, yeah. Do you want to maybe explain the parking? How we're kind of changing it, but not significantly.
Yeah, there's some parking out there. You can kind of see, I don't know how easy it is to see on your screen, but you can see this sort of light white line here. That's the existing curb line. You can see there's some stalls out there right now, and we're wanting to mimic that. However, right now they have the option of pulling in off of the roadway totally, and there's sort of a raised island right there. You can see that that's that gray line. So that raised island goes away, and it's more of just a typical sort of on-street parking where, you know, we bulbed the curb out enough so that you can safely park cars and get in and out of that area.
Parallel parking.
Parallel right? Parking, correct. And there'll be a little concrete patch here so that when someone's, say, on the passenger side is getting out, they're not stepping onto wet grass or anything. It's not shown in this drawing, but we'll have these various connections over to the trail so people don't have to walk through mud or wet grass or anything like that. All right, so let me close that. So that's that section we talked about on 16th. Here's that spot near Dash Point. Okay, here's a typical section through at the north half in that wooded area. You can see it's a 10-foot trail, and we have 2-foot shoulders on either side. And sometimes the hillside that's out there today comes up, it's much steeper, and we just don't have the room to cut the hillside back at a 2-to-1 slope. That would chase it like all the way back to the packed highway. So there's some locations where we have to put a little bit of a retaining wall here, which I think I have a there's a typical section of what that would look like. A wall here, the scale of this wall is, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet high in that range. It's not huge. Still, anytime you do have something over, I think it's 4 feet, maybe 3 feet, you do have to provide some sort of fall protection in case anyone's up here, they don't fall down. So there'll be some sort of fall protection, probably some sort of vinyl coated chain link fence. And then here you can see the pedestrian scale lighting. We're still trying to figure out exactly what this light pole standard is, but there will be some lights along the trail here. I think I have another slide. Oh, here's a zoomed in picture at that very north end where it connects into 288. We have this trail option B and trail option A, and right now we're taking the approach that trail option B is the preferred route. It's just more feasible from a cost standpoint. You can see these black lines here with that little double dash is the existing right-of-way. And if we were going to go with option A, obviously that's private property there, and that would have to be purchased. But we're thinking that this trail option B would stay totally within this private property here. And we're actually still trying to figure out, we're looking at title reports of the various properties that we're going to be going through. We're still trying to figure out the exact property line of some of these, and there is apparently a 20-foot wide existing utility easement there at the very least. So we're working through that. And Aaron, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything from a landscaping standpoint. This is a terminus.
Yeah, it's a terminus, and because of the grade change from Pacific Highway, we really wanted to enhance the entry into the trail at this point, and so that it would be visible as much as possible from different vantage points, and again provide some potential areas for meeting someone if you're going to jog or walk or bike with someone along this trail, and have some seating and potential signage and other amenities to really enhance that terminus or entry point as if you went south. So we're looking forward to implementing that, and like Sean had mentioned before, there's quite a few utilities here as well. Some can remain where they're at, and we're designing around them, and others will have to be relocated.
Yes, and one thing that I just wanted to remind is that this is the edge of this parking lot. There's actually a kind of a crude 1 or 2 foot retaining wall there right now. It's actually held up by some W-beam guardrails. But this trail option B, the intent is we would take out the pavement on this parking lot and take out that retaining wall and build it, rebuild that short retaining wall. It would still only be like 2 feet high, but on top of that, there would be a traffic rated barrier, like a concrete barrier. So if you're walking on the trail here, it would look like a typical roadway type concrete barrier. And that's just to provide some extra protection. It's safer than, say, just a fence. And so it's going to be a 42-inch high barrier along here. And it will be sort of integrated with this little 2-foot stub wall that's along here. I think I actually have a typical section of that. Yep. So that's right here. So we were looking at this trail option A where it went outside onto this steep slope. And this diagram is a little deceiving in that the slope is probably realistically more like this.
Or steeper.
Yeah. So again, the plan is this trail option B where it's up on this existing sidewalk. The barrier, if we were to, we're going to build a new wall. If I were to draw that, I'll see how good my drawing skills are, but you can see the right-of-way line right there. the plan would be that there would be 2 feet flat, 2-foot bench, then this barrier coming up like this, and then back down, and it would look like that. Hopefully you can see what I drew there. And so again, the idea is all this work and all the construction is wholly within this side of the right-of-way line. Okay, that crude drawing is forever recorded. So Christine, I think that's essentially the last of the slides. Is there anything you think I missed or I should elaborate on back on some of the other slides?
No, I think that was a pretty good overview of the project. I just want to say for those individuals who are joining us tonight who did attend our earlier meetings, which our earlier meetings were neighborhood meetings with properties that were located within 300 feet of the trail. We did take some of the feedback we received from you guys, because I know when we did have those meetings that our trail option A was more of our preferred option. And so we did evaluate that some more, like Sean mentioned, and it wasn't entirely a cost-based decision, but that did play into it a lot when we got what some of the costs would be for the structures on that steep slope. And then also, I know one of the other concerns that we heard previously that we've tried to continue to focus with is there was a concern for safety along the trail and such. Aaron, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, they've been very, very valid concerns that we've taken to heart as a design team and working with the city on. And as Sean mentioned, there's several elements that we're doing to help increase the use of the trail that will bring positive uses to the spaces that's already there. And then the lighting will further enhance and encourage the use of it at lots of different times of the day, not just during daylight hours. And then making sure that there's nice open sight lines. And so, you know, avoiding really tall plants that could create hiding spots, and keeping that trail width, that typical section width, nice and open, really helps the visibility as you view to the east or to the west, but even more so as you look north and south. And the work that Sean's team's doing to regrade that slope so it's 5% or less will really help you know, be able to look down the trail or up the trail the whole way and be able to see anyone coming, friendly face, and be able to feel comfortable and safe as you use the trail at different times of the day. And then the amenities that we're going to be providing at some of these resting areas to really encourage the use of the trail as an alternative to Pacific Highway sidewalks and kind of the busyness and the noise that area brings. This will be a really enjoyable trail to use, and we're excited to see it come to fruition, and also just really contribute to the safety and just the multi-use of the spaces back there, you know, in the north section, but even further to the south as well.
Okay. Anything else, Christine? Want me to go to the last slide, or?
I think we're ready to go to the last slide. Yeah.
Yeah. So this slide. Oh no, this slide here. This was this last slide that we'll leave up here for a bit. Christine, I'll let you.
Right. Okay. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I see that we've had a couple additional people join that might not have heard that originally. So I'll kind of go through that again. We have a 2-week comment period where we're asking for people to submit any questions or comments on the project. So that would be until April 29th, which is 2 weeks from today. The city will then take your questions and comments, and we will prepare a consolidated response to all of those, and we will post that on the project webpage by May 7th. So in that blue box in the center of the page, it does have the link to the project webpage for the city. So we have 4 different ways that you can submit your comments. The top one there, the online form, that is probably the easiest for a user. You can do that on your smartphone, you can do that on a computer. It's just a form that will take you and it'll say, you can enter your name, your address, what your interest is in the project, like if you're a property owner along the corridor, if you're just a resident of Federal Way, like if you're a parent with the school district, whatever your interest is. If you're a non-motorized user, if you're a cycling enthusiast, you can just kind of identify what your particular interest is in the trail. And then there's a paragraph section where you can type in any questions or comments. And then you can just hit submit and that will go directly to me. The other options we have for you are by mail. You can mail a letter to City Hall, even though City Hall is still closed right now. We are getting mail there. So you can mail something to my attention. And so my address is listed there. You can call and leave a voicemail at the number listed there. And again, we won't be returning calls there. They will just be part of the overall responses we do, but you can leave a voicemail at that number, or you can email me directly at my email listed there. So with the mail, voicemail, or email, I just have a list off to the side in the light blue box of things that we would hope that you guys would be willing to include when you're leaving a message or sending us a message. And that would be just your name, your address, phone number, email, what your interest is in the project, and then of course your question or comment or comments, questions. So thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope that this was beneficial to hear a little bit about the project. And if you've heard about it before, then just kind of to hear the updates on where we're at with things currently. So again, we appreciate you coming and listening, and we will just leave this screen up for, 5-10 minutes, however long is needed, so you can grab a pencil and jot down any of this information, or you could just take a quick picture of it if you have your cell phone near. And then again, this presentation will also be posted on the project webpage, that cityoffederalway.com/pack-highway-trail. And so you could also go there to get this information after the fact. So with that, I would just like to say thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to hearing any questions or comments that you may have. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks. I'll just leave this up, Christine, until you decide to turn it off.
Right, I'll wait and I'll see as people are leaving the meeting. I'll assume that they are done then.
Okay, all right.
Okay, all the attendees have logged off, so I'm going to cancel the meeting now or end it. Thanks, guys, for joining in.